bank accounts. And I'm teasing. Miguel will tell you about ways you can use OpenClaw-like agents in your actual work within the enterprise. So it's my pleasure to be facilitating this panel. These are three of my favorite companies in the space. They're not here to pitch their companies, but they are here to talk about the way they think about the work and how they've come to it and what they're seeing in the implementation. And Miguel will take us to a different space. He's the CEO. His dad is here, who's the founders. It's a family business of 50 amazing engineers, and they're doing incredible agentic design for places like Syracuse University, which has very aggressively deployed agents across the enterprise, and others as well. And it's also doing things with OpenClaw and OpenClaw-like agents, but in a way that's very secure. And I think the world of agents is fascinating. We want to sort of spend some time talking about that.
Yeah, we're a family-owned company. We're based in New York. My dad started this. My sisters work here. Amazing engineers overall. And it's very interesting how the company sort of trails the personality of you. Like what you guys are saying is perfect. And then after meeting you, I mean, this is the kind of thing that you were thinking, right? But yeah, it's so good. So we are engineers. Right, and we are of the controversial belief that maybe a university should have control over its code and its data and so on, right? Like it just probably should not be controversial, but that, you know, for some reason it kind of is. We work among others for Kaplan, the test prep company. We have a lot of their lines with the MCAT, nursing, SAT, and so on. For NVIDIA, we're a learning system as well, and then, you know, of course, many universities. And we do something that is apparently kind of weird, right? Kind of against the venture capitalist mantra, which is to just give our code, put our platform in the universities in terms of the ontology and the data layers and so on, not try to have some, like, you know, weird little business moat, right? Where in order for you to be able to use your data, you must talk to our servers. Like that's crazy, right? So we're basically deploying these agents and these sort of ontology layers and so on within the university's infrastructure. And then our job, you know, because we are engineers, like sometimes you have maybe tech companies, right, who, you know, just because someone's good at building software, then say, oh, this person must be good at theology and pedagogy and all these other things. And like, not really, you know, we're good at building applications. Okay, these forms are going to work, it's going to scale, it's going to be secure, you're not going to get hacked, the price is actually going to be very good, right? So with that mindset, we say, okay, across the university, you have all of these products, all these data stores that over the years have, you know, each stored, you know, little bits of your students and your content and so on. Right? You have the PeopleSofts and the Slates and the LMSs and so on. Right? There are these nice little silos all across the board. And if we were in a place where that data was accessible, right, and accessible not according to some, I don't know, compliance standard, right, but accessible as in if somebody, let's say in your office, knows what is supposed to be helpful for a student right now. It's like, it would be really nice to be able to see how many students are, well, insert metric here, and you are actually able to interact with that as opposed to, you know, setting up committees, getting ultimately some time from some engineer, what's gonna like lead to a request to a vendor that's gonna charge you like $80K over 6 months to do something, right? That's not good. So what we are doing is we're saying, okay, we have this, you know, this system, right, to build agents. We're calling it an operating system because we thought that the operating system terminology was a nice way of combining the platform, the software with the services, right? Because sometimes it's very necessary. We can't just come and say, oh, you know, here it is. Say, well, I have a different way of doing things at my college, right? So the services are very important. But it's a system to create agents on top of an ontology layer, right? Basically a system that sort of integrates the data from each of your subsystems that then you can create skills files against, right? Or create agents against. Okay, so it's basically saying, okay, if I have my data from PeopleSoft and Slate and Canvas, okay, you can obviously insert any other possible application. It doesn't really matter. And you zoom out of EdTech, right? So I don't know how many of you are familiar with something called MCP, for example. MCP is called, you know, Model Context Protocol. It's if you look at sort of where the AI industry is in general outside of EdTech, you know, there are the LLM wars, right? So, Gemini versus, like, you know, OpenAI versus Anthropic versus Llama, whatever, right? There's the LLM wars. And then there is the integration competition, right? So people are saying, okay, why would a student of yours use your agents as opposed to vanilla ChatGPT? So, well, because your agents actually know what the student's major is, what their grades are. You don't have, the students have to keep repeating this stuff, right? So that's kind of the data integration part and the context part. So if you zoom out of EdTech and you say, okay, so everyone's familiar with the LLM wars, right? People have different LLMs that are favorite for things. Okay, on the integration wars, even though in EdTech it seems to not have really permeated yet, the integration problem is, I don't want to say solved, right? But there are best practices for this stuff, right? And Anthropic, for example, came up with this standard. This was last year, and they say, okay, all of these people, all of these little silos have their little databases, their little APIs. Nobody knows how to access them. Okay, the process for getting them is very complex. Well, let's put this thing called an MCP on top, whose job is going to be to convert English to API endpoints. Okay? So if I say, hey, how is this student doing? Okay, what the Canvas API needs to know is return the grades for the student across all their courses, for example. You can build those little connectors, super popular standard. Anthropic came up with that, Google adopted it, the Linux Foundation has it. Outside of EdTech, extremely common. And that's the kind of thing that we are doing, right? So we're going to the universities, we're saying, look, here's a stack, so it's ready to go. You know, we can get, you can have agents where you're already interacting with your data in a matter of, I don't want to say hours because the conversations usually take longer, right? But in a matter of days. And you can start to have people who are domain experts interacting with the data across the university. And there is no weird gotcha at the end, which is like, oh, in order to do this, you have to surrender all your data to some company. No, right? It stays in your servers. And that's what we're doing.
This is Miguel after only one cup of coffee. You should see him after a double espresso.
I actually had a couple.
I think we can tell Miguel. The folks at Syracuse love Miguel and his team. I do a lot of work for the Gates Foundation, scoping out kind of the landscape of AI in higher ed, and there are a number of institutions that stand out, and Syracuse would be one for its pretty aggressive move into rethinking their tech stack. Miguel, Clementine is their agent, which I assume you guys built for them. It is a student navigator kind of through, from pretty close to the top end of the funnel. If Dan reached out to you and said, we want to build an agent that works with our prospective students, what would that conversation entail?
So
Don't give me the technical one. Give me what Dan needs to understand to be able to say, this could be something interesting.
Really dumb.
Dan knows the stuff already, so don't talk about the technical.
So the complexity would be, let's say, if we're building an agent, and we say, okay, so how much data can we have access to from what you know about the student? Okay, and sometimes the answer is, look, I need to prove this out to other people before I even sort of bring this up, even if it's a quick question ultimately, but right away you would say, okay, I want to have sort of this kind of interaction, and we can write, for example, for advising. A lot of the materials may be public, right? The catalog may be public. If it's not public, it's easily downloadable and it's static, right? So it's the same for everybody, and that's generally, a couple of emails away, right? That part is fine. We can create an agent that will say, okay, I don't necessarily know about your admissions background, right? But if I can work with you to have a conversation based on, the stuff that I offer, the times when it's offered, and kind of your objectives, then that works. So basically, there's a level of how much data can we have access to in an easy time frame. If we can go to the next level, we'll say, okay, so here's the catalog, right? And here's maybe what applies to everybody. Well, now here's the system, I don't know, in my SIS, where we can have a little bit more information about the user, okay? And then there is, a little like MCP connector or something. Okay, well we're gonna connect that. We can talk about the firewalls and all of that stuff, right? But it's basically like that. And Syracuse, right now they've connected it right to so many things, but in phase 1, it was with the materials that were very easily accessible, right? It was like maybe the stuff that you have in Canvas, they use Blackboard, right? But it's basically a conversation, and it depends on how much data you have. Things are useful from day 0. Now, the more data that you have, well, the more useful it is. but you don't have to go, oh, until I have the day 10 thing, I can't do anything. No, it's progressively useful. And even if you have a day 0 product, that is much more helpful than nothing, right? So if you're going to be revolutionary with my already busy job, right, and I'm stressed out for a bunch of things, then that's a little stressful, right? But so ideally, I think it's a little bit on the leaders to sort of convey this and to make this actually be evolutionary, right? So one example from our people. So we have from the very beginning, right? Our engineers, I mean, they're absolutely excellent. It's made very clear to them that literally nobody is going to get fired for the improvement of the financial bottom line. All right, like nobody's going to be doing that, right? So in that sense, they have a cover, they have a professional cover, but obviously their families and so on depend on their salaries and so on. So they have a professional cover to actually innovate greatly with AI. We went from producing a couple of applications, those were basically every customer of ours went into one or the other, to now it's an app development framework, and those two are the most popular. But now what we are doing is building basic applications for the entire higher ed stack. Not really possible before, and not really possible without the individualized involvement from each engineer. Okay, we can give like pep talks, right? But if they don't want to do it, then they're not going to do it. So from the very beginning is, okay, you have this. In this case, in this company, it's going to be evolutionary, right? You're not. Nobody is gonna, you don't have to be looking over your head as if you implement some process and then your boss is like, oh, well, that process is done, I get out of here. Right? We're not doing that, right? So in many places, it seems as though, well, I think that's kind of the ideal position for everybody, right? Like everybody's like, why do you join the jobs that you do? So, well, transform students. Okay, but you're answering emails. So if something is, which is, no, but it's interesting because there's a difference between the ultimate goal and then what sort of we spend a lot of our day doing. And you're like, okay, well, I have to answer the emails. That's how I communicate. So in a setting where you have the tooling to transform students, that does not require you to be, doing the email thing all the time, then you would probably take that. Now, it's not just the cover or the emotional thing of your job is going to be safe. In many cases, you're operating in systems where you don't really have access to that data in the first place. Right, so it's like, okay, so if I'm not going to answer the emails, I don't really have access to any of this data that exists to be able to have a transformative impact. So I would say evolutionary if done correctly, because otherwise it's just very scary and like honestly, people have enough things to worry about. But it's a little bit on the, maybe on the CIO level or on the university, on the institutional level, to actually set things up in a way that people can do their jobs. You know Dr. Damian Clark, the CIO of Alabama State? So yeah. We work a lot with him and with Morehouse. And in his case, he's also with Gates, right? But he talks about how his people, in an already super resource constrained institution, spend multiple hours. If you want to say, how is this student doing? They spend so long dealing with all these clunky systems that they have to go and basically fish out some information for. And he says that is so, yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, that's so bad, right? The opportunity cost of that is so high, to say this as non-controversially as possible, right? But
just go ahead.
This maybe is true across all industries, but many companies in EdTech are straight up lying. And basically people have assumptions based on things that they've been told that are just not like that at all, right? And they're relying on some information asymmetry that whenever there is at least one person on the other end who knows even what to ask, the entire thing comes down. Okay, so this is very interesting because we have, for example, let's say you see like OpenAI, right? What's the price of OpenAI? I don't know, $20 per student. Maybe you get a better deal. Okay, that's the price that you're told. Now, if you're an engineer, well, Sam Altman also says that the prices of LLMs converge on the price of electricity. Okay, so which is it, right? Because is it $20 per user per month, or is it converging on the price of electricity? What do the developers charge when they use OpenAI? Okay, well, some cents per million tokens. Okay, but you just said $20 per user per month, right? And we have, many of you are in SUNY, for example, right? So we just had a great SUNY IITG grant, right? Where there were 3 people on the SUNY end, extremely smart, who sort of see past this. They wanted to give their students access to Gemini, to Perplexity, OpenAI, Anthropic, and so on. They go to each of those companies. What is it? $20 per user per month. Okay, start racking them up. It's like $100 per user per month. Now, because somebody on the SUNY end knows that that's nonsense, that those companies are trying to appeal to a developer audience, they could say, okay, well now instead I'm going to be looking for something, they landed with us and so on, but they're going to be looking for something that just consumes the developer prices of the LLMs. Literally, because this person knew this stuff, they saved SUNY from hundreds of thousands of dollars to they paid instead $30K or something like that. Okay, but these are just massive differences. Syracuse, Jeff Rubin, their chief digital officer, extremely smart guy. He also knows he knows all the LLM companies. He knows kind of what they say and what they don't say. So instead of just subscribing to one of the expensive plans, it's like, guys, give me just access to your API, and I'm going to be having this deployed in my infrastructure. That guy saved Syracuse from paying well into the 8-figure realm to just low hundreds of thousands. Okay, so differences in just bits of information asymmetry that lead to not even a cost, an order of magnitude less in terms of cost, but way more. Is effectively through English, right? If you say, okay, I have these skills that I want this agent to do, that is not expressed through code. It's not even expressed through some annoying little workflow flowchart diagram. Okay, it's straight up English, right? So, and this is true in industry. Now, when people that we talk with, we start saying, okay, this is how you do this. This is in English, right? You can read this, I can read this. I'm not selling you on a process where I'm gonna be the bottleneck to you being productive, okay? Or you don't even have to rely on, campus IT, right, in order to be productive. This is it. You write it in English, you can use it. That's it. Generally, that works pretty well because people are like, okay, I can actually do my job. That's great. So all of these little silos. I think one thing that's also pretty positive with AI is you can have things like maybe one agent per student, right, or one agent per staff member, if you don't have these little silos. So just set up an example or a few examples for them for agents. It's right here. To your point, everything has defaults. You don't have to have a learning gap. And if you want to edit it, it's in English. And everyone knows how to use the chat box. So treating kind of the users a lot more like adults has been pretty helpful. And then when they say, just one thing is whenever there is some sort of barrier to, I cannot do this because my data is in this system, for example, then reverting to first principles and be like, okay, well, this has an API. What can we just call the API? And I guess so. Maybe we just have to call somebody else. Okay, cool. We call the API and that's it, right? So this kind of hyper productivity is when it's accessible. So it has to be in English. Can't be writing code because you don't know how and it's not interesting. And two is questioning some of those first principles because they have easy answers on them. We have a case in the West Coast, for example. There's an agent that people up into, nursing students, where the university says, okay, look, at night, we cannot have an employee of the university screen share with you to tell you what buttons to click on the LMS, okay? At night, nobody's employed to do that now. But we have an agent, you can screen share, you can explain it to him, and, not to anthropomorphize, whatever. You can speak to it, and then it's an easy way to sort of talk to your screen and then have the agent tell you what button to click on. Right? This is an agent, obviously. No one is giving you the illusion that it's a person. And that actually is extremely welcome. Almost every student has used that, and then they report great usage. Now, and satisfaction. Now, we have also seen other examples where sometimes the students were not disclosed that things were being done with AI, and one professor that we worked with, she got record terrible reviews on Rate My Professors from that, right? So there's a little bit of both ends, but generally the transparency and so on, if that is said and you can opt out and all that, then it seems to be pretty successful.
Yeah.
Please, Joel.
You were talking about the issue of displacing AI, displacing workforce, human element of the workforce. But when we see maybe the last year or two, right? We have seen massive layoffs in the technology industry.
100%.
And a lot of it is being attributed to these big companies leveraging AI to perform the same work that the employees were doing. And so I think in our industry, even when we just talk about automation or something, there's this fear that comes up. They're about to kick me out and use the technology to do the work that I was doing. So how do you balance that out, right? When they see this reality that is happening in the technology industry, and now bringing it into the higher education industry.
Go ahead.
I mean, I would say the onus is a little bit or a lot on the leadership of the institution, and sort of setting things up in a way where you can have the same amount of people. Like, here's the thing, with increased efficiency, you can either do the same job with less people, or you can do a better job, right? And no one, especially if you look at all the stats, right, in terms of how people are doing across all the test scores and all this, everything across society, there's a pretty good argument to be made that a better job would be welcome overall, right, from society. So AI brings increased efficiency. You can either do the same, let's say, standard level job with less people, that's true, or you can increase your scope drastically. And in order to increase your scope drastically, I think you need to have maybe the means for the people, the training, the unified sort of data layer, the means that the institution needs to set up in order for people to be productive.
Thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you, my panelists. I think we'd all agree that Rosario was an incredible baby up there. Yes. So thank you, Rosario. And thank you so much for having us. And so much, again, these guys traveled from quite a distance to be with you all, and they did it as a favor to me at Harvard. We really appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.